The lost dog Daniel lived in a small, quiet town where nights were peaceful and mornings slow. His best friend was not another human, but a loyal dog named Buddy. Buddy was more than a pet. He was family. Wherever Daniel went, Buddy followed. When Daniel laughed, Buddy wagged his tail. When Daniel felt sad, Buddy rested his head on Daniel's lap as if to say, "I am here." But one night everything changed. It started like any other evening. Daniel was drinking tea on his porch, watching the stars blink above the forest line. Buddy was chasing crickets in the yard, his ears perked and his nose twitching. The summer air was warm, but the night carried a strange stillness, as if the world was holding its breath. Daniel didn't notice it first. He leaned back in his chair, enjoying the quiet, then a bark. Short, sharp, and distant, Daniel sat up. "Buddy," he called. Another bark answered, but softer this time, muffled, fading into the darkness. Daniel frowned and grabbed a flashlight. The beam cut through the trees as he walked into the yard. He expected Buddy to come running, tail wagging, tongue out, full of playful energy. But Buddy did not come. Daniel searched the path near the garden, calling again. "Buddy!" His voice echoed against the forest edge. The only reply was silence, heavy and strange. His heart began to beat faster. Buddy had never run off before. He was a loyal dog, always close. Daniel whistled, Buddy's favorite call. No sound came back. No running paws, no joyful bark. Just the whisper of wind through the grass. Daniel hurried into the forest. The beam of his flashlight shook as his hand trembled. He searched the undergrowth, calling louder now. His voice cracked. Fear clawed its way up his chest. "Buddy, where are you, boy?" The forest seemed endless. Shadows moved between the trees and the silence grew heavier. Daniel felt like someone or something was watching him. He tried to push the thought away. "It's just nerves," he whispered to himself. But deep inside, he knew something was wrong. Hours passed. His flashlight dimmed. His throat burned from shouting. His legs ached from running. Still no Buddy. Finally, Daniel dropped to his knees in the dirt, tears stinging his eyes. "Where are you?" he whispered, his voice breaking. He felt helpless, powerless. Buddy wasn't just a dog. He was Daniel's only real companion. Losing him felt like losing a piece of his own soul. That night, Daniel barely slept. He sat on the porch, staring into the darkness, listening for even the faintest bark. But the night gave him nothing. Not even hope. The next morning, sunlight spilled over the town, but Daniel felt no warmth. His eyes were red, his body heavy. He walked the forest paths again, searching for any sign. Paw prints, broken branches, a sound. All he found were strange feelings he could not explain. The air seemed charged, humming softly like distant static. Near the edge of the forest, Daniel finally saw something. Small, faint impressions in the soil. At first, he thought they were animal tracks. But the shape was all wrong. They were tiny, almost delicate, with long, narrow toes that pressed deep into the dirt. Daniel crouched low, his breath catching. Next to those strange prints were familiar paw marks. Buddy's paw marks, his heart raced. Buddy had been here. But who or what was walking beside him? Daniel followed the tracks carefully, his stomach twisting with fear and curiosity. They led deeper into the trees, away from town. Every step made him more uneasy. The prints looked too precise, too strange to belong to any local animal. And yet they were small, childlike almost. For the first time, a chilling thought crossed his mind. What if Buddy wasn't alone out there? Daniel stopped and looked around. The forest was silent. Too silent. Even the birds had gone quiet. He whispered into the air, almost afraid to hear himself. "What took you, Buddy?" The question hung in the stillness like smoke, unanswered. That night, Daniel sat again on his porch, staring at the forest edge. Fear gnawed at him, but so did determination. He would not give up. Buddy was out there, he knew it in his bones. And whatever left those strange tracks, Daniel was going to find it. What he didn't know was that the truth waiting for him in those woods was far stranger than anything he had ever imagined. Because by the next evening, Daniel would discover that Buddy was not lost at all. He was safe, happy, and playing with two little beings who were not from this earth. And Daniel's quiet life would never, ever be the same. Strange footprints the next morning. Daniel woke with tired eyes and a heavy heart. He had barely slept. And every time he closed his eyes, he dreamed of Buddy lost and alone in the dark forest. But he refused to give up. Buddy was out there somewhere. He just had to keep searching. Daniel put on his boots and grabbed the flashlight again, even though the sun was already rising. The forest still felt strange, as if it was hiding secrets behind every tree. His steps were slow, careful, but his heart pounded fast. As he walked further down the trail, something caught his attention. On the damp soil just past the bushes, he saw markings. He bent low to the ground. At first his eyes widened in relief. He recognized the prints. "Buddy," he whispered, almost smiling. They were paw prints, fresh ones, small circles pressed into the dirt. Buddy had been here recently. But when Daniel looked closer, his relief quickly turned into confusion. Right next to the paw prints were other shapes. They were not boots. They were not the feet of any animal he had seen before. The prints were tiny, much smaller than a human's, with long, narrow toes spread wide apart. They looked almost fragile, yet pressed deep enough to show weight. Daniel frowned. What in the world? He touched the prints with his hand, measuring the size. They were no bigger than a child's hand. But the pattern was wrong. Too even, too strange. It was as if something delicate but strong had walked beside Buddy. His mind filled with questions. Were they children's footprints? If so, what children were wandering this far into the forest at night? But the shape didn't match any child's foot. It looked alien. A shiver ran down Daniel's spine. He decided to follow. The prints led deeper into the woods, twisting through thick branches and moss. Every step made the silence heavier. No birds sang, no squirrels ran. It was as if the forest itself was watching him. As Daniel followed, he noticed more signs. Small broken twigs, disturbed leaves, as if something had moved quickly but carefully. Buddy's paw prints stayed close to the strange ones, side by side. Daniel's throat tightened. His dog wasn't running away in fear. He was walking with them. The deeper he went, the stranger it became. The ground glowed faintly in some places, as if something hot or bright had passed recently. The prints grew clearer, fresher, and Daniel felt both hope and fear rise together. He crouched down again, studying them. "Buddy, what have you found?" he whispered. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. It was soft, like laughter. Daniel froze. It wasn't human laughter. It was higher, lighter, almost musical. The sound drifted through the trees, and for a moment he thought he imagined it. But then he heard it again. Two voices giggling, playing, and then another sound, a bark. Daniel's heart leapt. "Buddy!" he shouted. His voice echoed, and the laughter stopped instantly. The forest fell silent again, as if holding its breath. Daniel turned in circles, trying to pinpoint the direction. The bark had been real. Buddy was close. He started running, his feet crashing through leaves, his chest burning with both excitement and fear. He stopped at a small clearing. The prints ended here, circling around in patterns as if whoever made them had played, danced, or jumped in the dirt. Buddy's paw prints were mixed in, scattered with energy, but there was no one here now. The air felt charged, almost electric. The hairs on Daniel's arms stood on end. He turned slowly, flashlight in hand, even though it was daylight, scanning the trees. Something moved. A shadow slipped behind a tree at the far edge of the clearing. Daniel caught it just for a second, small, quick, not human. His heart hammered in his chest. "Who's there?" he called, his voice trembling but firm. "Show yourself." No answer. The forest gave him only silence again. Daniel's mind raced. If those were children, why would they hide? Why were they laughing with his dog in the first place? And if they weren't children, then what exactly were they? He knelt in the clearing, running his hand across the dirt where Buddy's prints circled with the strange ones. It was proof. He wasn't losing his mind. Buddy was alive and he wasn't alone, but was he safe? Or in danger? The thought ate at Daniel as he stood. He felt eyes on him, unseen eyes watching from the trees. He slowly backed away, his senses sharp, his ears straining for another sound. But nothing came. By the time Daniel made it home, the sun was dipping low. His body was tired, but his mind buzzed with questions. He sat on his porch again, staring into the forest. Somewhere out there, Buddy was alive, and he was with something else. Daniel whispered to himself, voice firm. "I'll find you, Buddy. No matter who or what has you." That night, he dreamed again, but this time the dream was not of emptiness. He saw Buddy wagging his tail happily, and beside him were two small figures, strange but innocent, with glowing eyes and gentle laughter. And for the first time, Daniel realized Maybe whatever had Buddy wasn't an enemy. Maybe it was something else entirely. Something not from this world. The shocking discovery. The next evening, Daniel could not stay at home. His heart was restless, his mind filled with the strange footprints, the faint laughter, and the sound of Buddy's bark. He had seen the proof with his own eyes. Buddy was alive. But Buddy was not alone. Something or someone was with him in the forest. As the sun began to fall, Daniel grabbed his flashlight, a small bag of food, and walked back toward the woods. His boots crunched on the gravel road, but inside his chest felt hollow with nervousness. He didn't know what he was walking into. All he knew was that he couldn't leave Buddy out there. The forest was quiet again, but Daniel felt that same strange charge in the air. Every tree seemed to hide secrets. His eyes scanned the ground for signs, and soon he found what he hoped for: fresh prints. Paw marks pressed into the dirt, side by side with those long, delicate impressions he had seen before. His heart quickened. They were close. Daniel followed them, careful not to make too much noise. The path wound deeper, where tall trees blocked the last rays of sunlight. Shadows stretched long across the forest floor. The air grew cooler, and Daniel's breath came slow and steady. Then it happened. A sound broke the silence. Soft giggles like before. But this time they were clearer, more real. Daniel froze, every muscle tight, his ears straining. And then he heard it, the bark. Buddy's bark. Happy, playful, full of energy. Tears stung Daniel's eyes as relief washed over him. "Buddy," he whispered. He crept forward, pushing past the thick bushes. He crouched low, moving carefully, afraid to scare whatever else was there. His flashlight stayed off. He wanted the darkness to hide him. The sounds grew louder. Giggles, soft footsteps, and the unmistakable sound of Buddy panting. Daniel's chest pounded. He reached the edge of a small clearing and peeked through the branches, and what he saw made his breath catch. Buddy was there, tail wagging, tongue out, running in circles. But he wasn't alone. Two small figures played with him, chasing him, laughing in voices that sounded like bells. They were not human. Their skin glowed faintly in the dim light, soft blue with hints of silver. Their eyes were large, brighter than any human's, reflecting the little starlight above. Their hair floated lightly as if a breeze touched only them. They wore simple garments made of shimmering cloth like woven light. They looked like children, tiny and fragile, but clearly not from Earth. Daniel's mouth went dry. His body trembled with shock. For a long moment he couldn't move. He couldn't even breathe. Two little alien girls, playing with his dog. Buddy barked happily, running between them, letting them chase him. One of the girls fell into the grass with a giggle, and Buddy licked her face. The other clapped her hands, making a sound that rang like crystal. They looked harmless, innocent, joyful. Daniel's mind raced. He should have felt fear. He should have run back to town. But all he felt was wonder and confusion. These weren't monsters. They weren't hunters. They were just children. Still, questions flooded his mind. Who were they? Where did they come from? Why were they here with his dog? As Daniel watched, Buddy suddenly stopped playing and lifted his head. His ears twitched. Slowly, Buddy turned his gaze toward the bushes where Daniel was hiding. Their eyes met. Daniel froze, but Buddy barked once and wagged his tail. He ran toward him, pushing through the bushes, almost knocking Daniel down with excitement. Daniel hugged him tightly, burying his face in Buddy's fur. Relief and joy filled him like never before, but then silence. Daniel looked up slowly. The two alien girls stood still in the clearing, staring at him. Their glowing eyes were wide, curious but cautious. They didn't move closer. They didn't run. They just watched. Daniel rose slowly, his hand resting on Buddy's back. His heart raced. He didn't want to scare them. He opened his mouth but found no words. Finally, he whispered, voice trembling, "Hello?" The girls tilted their heads, their expressions unreadable. Then one of them stepped closer. Her movements were slow, gentle, almost shy. She raised a small hand and pointed at Buddy. Her lips moved, and in a soft, broken voice she spoke a word that sent chills through Daniel. "Friend." Daniel's eyes widened. She had spoken in English or something close to it. The word was imperfect but clear enough. The second girl took a step forward too, clutching the first girl's hand. They looked at Daniel, then at Buddy, then back at Daniel again. Their glowing eyes softened as if they weren't afraid anymore. Buddy barked once more as if to say, "It's okay. They're safe." Daniel's heart thundered in his chest. He had come searching for his lost dog. But now, standing in the clearing, staring at two alien children from another world, he realized something much bigger. This was no ordinary search. This was the beginning of something, far beyond his understanding, something that would change his life forever, and, though fear still sat in his chest, one thought burned brighter than all the others. He was the first human to meet them. First contact, Daniel stood frozen in the clearing, Buddy wagging his tail happily at his side. The two little alien girls stared back at him with wide, glowing eyes, their hands clasped tightly together. For a moment, the world felt silent, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Daniel swallowed hard. His mind screamed 100 things at once: fear, wonder, disbelief. But when he looked at their small faces, he didn't see danger. He saw innocence. Slowly, Daniel raised his hands in front of him, palms open, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay," he whispered softly. "I won't hurt you." The girls tilted their heads, their eyes reflecting starlight. Buddy barked once, his tail thumping against Daniel's leg. The sound seemed to ease the tension. One of the girls, the one who had said friend, stepped forward a little. Her silver blue skin glowed faintly, and her delicate feet made no sound on the grass. She pointed at Buddy again. "Friend," she repeated, voice shaky but clear. Daniel's chest tightened. They weren't just creatures, they were trying to speak. "To connect, yes," he said, gently nodding. "Buddy is my friend." The girl's lips curved into a small smile. The second girl clung to her hand but looked less afraid now. She whispered something in a language Daniel didn't understand. Soft, musical sounds like a flowing river. The first girl nodded and then looked back at Daniel. She placed her hand on her chest. "Lyra," she said. Daniel blinked. "Lyra," the girl nodded. Then she gently nudged the other, who stepped forward shyly. The second girl placed her hand on her own chest. "Nia," she whispered. Daniel's heart raced. Names, they had names. They were real beings, not monsters or shadows. "Lyra, Nia," he repeated softly, pointing to each in turn. Then he tapped his own chest. "Daniel." Both girls tilted their heads, then mimicked him. "Dan." "Eel," Lyra said slowly. Daniel almost laughed from the shock of it. The sound of his own name, spoken by alien children, felt unreal, like a dream he couldn't wake from. Buddy barked again, bouncing between them all as if he were proud of introducing his best friend to his new playmates. The girls giggled softly, and the sound melted the last of Daniel's fear. Still, his mind was filled with questions. Why were they here? Where had they come from? Were they alone? He wanted to ask, but how? Their English was broken, their gestures simple. He would have to be patient. Daniel crouched down slowly so he wouldn't tower over them. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small piece of bread he had packed. He held it out carefully. "Food," he said. The girls glanced at each other, uncertain. Then Nia stepped closer, reaching out a trembling hand. She took the bread and sniffed it. Her glowing eyes widened with curiosity. She nibbled it slowly, then her face lit up. She turned to Lyra and said something excited in her musical tongue. Lyra took a piece too, tasting it carefully. Both of them smiled, their sharp fear softening into warmth. Daniel felt a strange relief flood through him. Food had always been a universal language, and tonight it had worked again, even across the stars. For a while they sat together in the clearing. Daniel pointed at the sky. "Stars," he said. The girls followed his finger, their bright eyes shining as they nodded. They whispered to each other, pointing at a cluster of stars, speaking quickly in their own language. Daniel realized then, they were not just visitors. They were lost. Their clothes were torn in places, their hair tangled, their small faces carrying the tiredness of children far from home. He felt a sharp ache in his chest. They were alone, scared, and yet still capable of smiling, laughing, and playing with a dog. "Where are your parents?" Daniel asked softly, though he knew they might not understand. He pressed his hands together, then spread them apart, acting out separation. Lyra's smile faded. She looked down at the grass, her glowing eyes dimming. Nia pressed closer to her, clutching her arm. In a small, shaky voice, Lyra whispered, "Gone." Crash. Daniel's heart sank. A crash? Could it be a ship? A terrible accident? Suddenly, the strange glow in the soil, the humming in the air, it all made sense. They had not come here by choice. Buddy whined softly, sensing the sadness. He pressed against the girls and they hugged him tightly. Daniel clenched his fists. Whatever had happened, these two children were alone on a strange planet. They had no one except Buddy, and now except him. He took a deep breath and stood, determination settling in his chest. "You're safe now," he said, even if they couldn't fully understand. "I'll help you." The girls looked up at him, their glowing eyes filled with both fear and fragile hope. And in that moment, Daniel knew his quiet life was gone. He was no longer just a man searching for his dog. He was now the guardian of two lost alien children, but he also knew something else. If these girls were here, if their ship had crashed, others might be coming, and not all of them would be friendly. The hidden truth. Daniel led Lyra, Nia, and Buddy back toward his cabin. The forest around them was dark, the trees whispering as the night wind passed through. He carried his flashlight, but he kept it low, afraid the light might attract attention. He didn't know from whom, but his instincts told him they were not safe. The two little alien girls followed close behind, holding hands. Their glowing skin made them easy to spot in the shadows. Daniel noticed how they glanced nervously around, their eyes wide, their movements cautious. They were children, but they acted like ones who had already seen too much fear. When they reached the cabin, Daniel opened the door quietly and gestured them inside. Buddy rushed in first, wagging his tail, but the girls hesitated. They looked around the small wooden home with curiosity and suspicion. Daniel knelt and gave them a gentle smile. "Safe," he said, tapping his chest and then pointing to the cabin. "Safe here." Lyra nodded slowly and she guided Nia inside. They sat near the fireplace where the dim orange light flickered across their silver-blue faces. Daniel placed a blanket over their shoulders, though he wasn't sure if they felt cold the same way humans did. For a moment, they just sat there, silent. Then Daniel asked softly, "Crash? What happened?" Lyra and Nia exchanged a long look. They whispered quickly in their own language, their voices like flowing water. Then Lyra lifted her head, her glowing eyes wet with something that looked like tears. "Ship," she said carefully, her broken English struggling. "Boomfire family. Gone." Daniel's chest tightened. He pictured a spaceship tearing through Earth's sky, breaking apart, crashing into the forest. He imagined frightened children climbing out of the wreckage, alone and lost. "Where?" Daniel asked. He pointed toward the woods. "Ship where?" Lyra raised a small trembling hand and pointed east, deeper into the forest. "Far broken." But Daniel nodded slowly. His mind swirled with questions. If their ship was nearby, why hadn't anyone else seen it? Or had someone seen it already? "Are others coming?" he asked carefully. He spread his arms wide, imitating a ship descending from the sky. Lyra's expression changed. Fear flashed across her face. She shook her head quickly, clutching Nia's hand. "Hunters," she whispered. Daniel froze. "Hunters?" Lyra nodded again. "Bad men. Want us." A chill ran down Daniel's spine. He suddenly remembered the strange electric feeling in the air, the glowing marks in the soil, the way the forest had gone silent. It wasn't just random. It meant something had passed through, something dangerous. He leaned closer. "Who are they? Why?" Lyra struggled with words, but she pointed at herself and Nia. Then she pressed her small hands to her chest, almost like a symbol of importance. "Royal," she whispered. Daniel blinked. "Royal?" The word struck him like thunder. These weren't just lost alien children. They were royalty. Princesses, maybe. That explained their strange, shimmering clothes, their innocent but commanding eyes. And it explained why someone would hunt them. "Family. King, Queen," Nia whispered, her voice small and trembling. She looked down, her glowing eyes clouded with sorrow. Daniel's breath caught. Their parents, rulers of another world, gone in the crash. Only the children had survived. The truth hit him hard. He wasn't just protecting two alien kids. He was protecting two alien royal heirs. No wonder hunters were coming. Daniel sat back heavily, running his hands over his face. His simple, quiet life had exploded into something he couldn't have imagined even in his wildest dreams. Two alien princesses hiding in his cabin, ruthless hunters searching for them, and only him and his dog standing between them. Buddy pressed his head against Daniel's leg as if sensing his master's turmoil. Daniel placed a shaky hand on Buddy's fur. "What do we do, boy?" he whispered. The girls looked at him with wide, trusting eyes. They didn't fully understand his words, but they understood the feeling. They were relying on him. Daniel stood slowly and looked out the window into the dark forest. Somewhere out there the hunters were searching. He could feel it. Time was running out. He turned back to the girls and knelt in front of them. "Listen," he said slowly, pointing to himself. "Daniel, in protect." Lyra blinked at him. Nia tilted her head. Then after a moment Lyra touched her chest and whispered, "Trust." The single word sent a strange warmth through Daniel's heart. He didn't know how this had become his responsibility, but he knew one thing clearly now. He could not abandon them. Not to the forest. Not to the hunters. Not to anyone. Tonight the hidden truth had been revealed. These weren't just children. They were royal children, and their lives were worth far more than he could imagine. But Daniel also knew something else. If hunters were coming for them, then his cabin was no longer safe. He had to make a choice. Hide, run, or fight, and somehow deep inside Daniel felt this was only the beginning of a much larger battle. Danger arrives. The night was colder than usual. Daniel sat near the window of his cabin, staring into the dark forest beyond. His hands gripped the edge of the wooden table so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The silence outside no longer felt peaceful. It felt heavy, waiting, ready to break. Behind him, Lyra and Nia huddled together under a blanket near the fireplace. Their glowing eyes blinked in the dim light, filled with both exhaustion and fear. Buddy lay curled beside them, his ears twitching every few seconds as if he too sensed something wrong. Daniel whispered to himself, "They're coming." The girls had said one word that refused to leave his mind: hunters. Whoever they were, they had power, technology, and a reason to chase these children. And now, Daniel was standing between them and their prize. A sudden noise made him flinch. A distant hum, low at first, then growing louder. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't thunder. It was mechanical, unnatural. Daniel's heart jumped. He rushed to the window, pulling the curtain back slightly. In the sky, faint lights glowed, moving slowly above the tree line. They weren't planes. They were too silent, too smooth. A shimmer of silver and red pulsed as the lights hovered for a moment, then split apart like search lamps scanning the ground. Daniel's stomach dropped. The hunters had arrived. Buddy growled low, his body tense, ready to defend. Lyra and Nia clutched each other tighter, their little hands shaking. "Bad men," Lyra whispered, her broken voice trembling. Daniel turned away from the window and crouched in front of them. "Listen to me," he said firmly, even though his voice shook. "Stay quiet, stay low. Don't move unless I say." The girls nodded quickly, their eyes wide with trust. The hum outside grew louder. Beams of strange, pale light swept across the trees, cutting through branches and shadows like knives. Daniel's chest tightened as one beam passed dangerously close to his cabin roof. He held his breath, praying they wouldn't notice. Then came another sound, a heavy thud like something landing. The ground beneath the cabin shook slightly. Buddy barked once, sharp and angry, but Daniel hushed him quickly. Through the window, he saw them. Figures moved in the forest, tall, armored, their bodies covered in black and silver suits that gleamed under the searchlights. Their faces were hidden behind smooth helmets with glowing visors. They carried strange weapons that glowed faintly blue, humming with energy. Daniel's blood ran cold. These weren't soldiers, he knew. They weren't from Earth, they were something else entirely. One of the hunters raised a device, scanning the ground. A red light swept over the dirt, searching for traces. Suddenly, the device beeped and the hunter pointed toward Daniel's cabin. Daniel's heart sank. They had found the trail. He spun around, grabbing the shotgun that hung on the wall. It wasn't much, not against whatever advanced weapons these hunters carried, but it was all he had. He loaded it with shaking hands, his mind racing. Could he really fight them? No, not head on, but maybe he could buy time. "Buddy," Daniel whispered. The dog stood instantly, ears perked. Daniel pointed to the back of the cabin. "Guard them." Buddy barked once softly and moved beside the girls, standing tall like a little soldier. Daniel took a deep breath and stepped outside. The night air was sharp, the hum of the ships above rattling his bones. He moved quietly along the cabin wall, shotgun in hand, every step slow. His heart pounded so loudly he feared they would hear it. Through the trees he saw the hunters moving closer. their lights cutting through the darkness. One of them stopped, crouched low, and touched the ground. His visor glowed brighter. Daniel pressed himself against the cabin wall, sweat dripping down his neck. He couldn't let them find the girls. He couldn't let them step inside that cabin. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the night, a branch snapping under a heavy boot. Daniel flinched. The nearest hunter turned his head sharply, visor glowing red as he scanned the area. Daniel raised his shotgun, hands trembling. If they came closer, if they tried the door, he would have no choice. The hunter took a step forward. Another followed behind him. Their weapons hummed, aimed high and ready. Daniel whispered under his breath, "Not tonight. You're not taking them tonight." Before he could move, Buddy barked loudly from inside the cabin. The sound echoed through the forest, breaking the silence. The hunter's helmet snapped toward the sound. One of them pointed directly at the cabin. Daniel's blood froze. They knew. The hunters raised their weapons. Strange blue light flickered along the barrels, growing brighter as they charged. Daniel didn't know what kind of firepower they had, but he knew it would be deadly. He gripped the shotgun tighter, every muscle tense. He could run. He could hide. But looking back at the window, he saw two small glowing faces watching him with absolute trust. He couldn't run. Not now. Not ever. The night exploded with tension as Daniel stepped forward, ready to protect the only family he had left, his dog, and the two alien children who had placed their fate in his hands. Humanity's bond. The hunters moved closer. Their glowing weapons pointed at Daniel's cabin. The pale lights from their helmets cut through the darkness, painting the forest floor in eerie colors. The hum of their machines grew louder, and Daniel knew he had only seconds before they stormed inside. He gripped his shotgun, his palms sweaty but his heart steady. He had faced fear before, losing Buddy, wandering the woods alone, but this was different. This was life and death. Two small alien girls, fragile and innocent, were depending on him. And Buddy, his loyal friend, was ready to fight by his side. Daniel stepped forward into the open clearing. His voice rang out louder than he thought possible. "Stop!" The hunters froze, their glowing visors snapping toward him. For a moment the forest fell silent again. Then one of the hunters tilted his head, his metallic voice buzzing through a translator. "Human, stand aside. The children are ours." Daniel's chest tightened. He had expected this. But hearing the words filled him with fire. He raised his shotgun, the barrel steady. "They're not yours. And you're not taking them." The hunters shifted, their weapons glowing brighter. "You cannot stop us," one hissed. Daniel's voice shook, but his spirit did not. "Maybe not. But I'll try." For a heartbeat, the forest held still. Then chaos erupted. One hunter fired first. A blast of blue energy seared past Daniel, burning a tree trunk into ash. Daniel dropped low and fired his shotgun. The blast echoed like thunder. The shot hit one hunter's chest, knocking him back into the dirt with a crash of sparks. Buddy leapt forward, barking fiercely, charging at another hunter. His small body dodged under a glowing weapon, his teeth sinking into the armored leg. The hunter stumbled, cursing in a strange alien tongue. Daniel fired again, his shotgun shaking his arms. He knew it wasn't enough. His weapon was primitive, nothing compared to their technology. But it was loud, strong, and full of human defiance. The hunters regrouped, 3 of them advancing fast. Daniel's chest burned with fear. He couldn't let them reach the cabin. He backed away, trying to draw them toward him and away from the girls. Inside the cabin, Lyra and Nia pressed their faces against the window. Their glowing eyes were wide with terror. Lyra whispered to her sister, "Trust," remembering Daniel's promise. Daniel stumbled, reloading, but one hunter aimed directly at him. A glowing blue bolt shot toward his chest, and then the night sky roared. A thunderous sound ripped through the air, louder than anything Daniel had ever heard. A blinding light swept across the forest, and the hunters froze, their helmets turning upward. Through the clouds, a massive ship descended, larger than anything Daniel could imagine. Its surface gleamed with silver and gold, its engines humming like 1,000 voices. The trees bent under its force as it hovered above. The hunters shouted in panic, their voices breaking. "Retreat! Retreat!" From the ship, beams of light shot down, wrapping around the hunters like chains. One by one they were lifted, struggling and screaming, until they vanished into the blinding glow. Then silence fell, the hunters gone as quickly as they had appeared. Daniel dropped his shotgun, his chest heaving, his ears ringing. Buddy ran back to his side, tail wagging. Fur bristled from the fight. Daniel knelt, hugging him tightly. "Good boy. Good boy," he whispered. Then, from the massive ship, a softer beam of light descended. Two tall figures appeared in the clearing. Their forms shimmered with grace and power, their silver blue skin glowing like the children's. Their robes glistened like woven starlight, and their eyes burned with wisdom. The girls gasped. "Mother, father!" They burst from the cabin, running into the clearing. Daniel's breath caught as he saw them leap into the arms of their parents. The alien rulers knelt, embracing their children tightly, tears shimmering in their glowing eyes. Daniel stood slowly, unsure what to do. He felt out of place, a simple man holding a crude shotgun, standing before royalty from another world. The tall alien male, clearly the father, looked at him. His glowing eyes softened with deep gratitude. In a voice that carried both strength and warmth, he spoke, the translator shimmering around his words. "You protected them. When no one else could, you stood." Daniel swallowed hard, nodding. "They're just kids. I couldn't let them. I couldn't let anyone hurt them." The alien mother stepped forward, her presence calm and powerful. She placed her delicate hand over Daniel's chest. "Your heart is strong. Your courage is rare." Daniel felt warmth spread through him, a strange but comforting energy. Lyra and Nia broke free from their parents for a moment and ran back to Daniel. They hugged him tightly, their small arms wrapping around his waist. "Friend," Lyra whispered. "Forever." Daniel's throat tightened. He placed his hands gently on their heads. "Stay safe," he said softly. The alien father raised his hand, and a shimmering token appeared in Daniel's palm. It glowed with golden light, humming softly. "This is our bond," he said. "One day, if you ever need us, call, and we will come." Daniel stared at the token, unable to speak. The children were guided back into the beam of light, their parents holding them close. As the ship rose, the forest glowed bright, then dimmed as it vanished into the sky, leaving only stars behind. Silence returned. The hunters were gone. The aliens were safe. Daniel stood in the clearing, Buddy by his side holding the glowing token. His cabin behind him looked small and ordinary, but his life would never be ordinary again. He whispered into the night, "Guess it's true, Buddy. Humanity's bond. It's bigger than just us." Buddy barked once, tail wagging as if to agree, and under the stars Daniel smiled, knowing his act of courage had reached beyond Earth itself.